Over the past 10 years, we've seen some absolutely wild scandals, and there has been a lot of drama in the Destiny community. This video will shine a light on some of the darkest moments of Destiny's past and reveal how these events have shaped the game over time. I've loosely formatted this in the iceberg style, meaning that the stories will get more strange and obscure as we go. So, from streamers getting caught cheating to thousands of players being wrongly banned, here is a retrospective look back at some of the most ridiculous things to ever happen in the history of this community. Jumping right in with the first topic, the developers were caught stealing this artwork from a fan and using it in the game without their permission. As you can see, it is pretty blatant, and there is no question that it was basically just copy-pasted directly into the game with a couple of filters slapped on top. The original artist was shocked to see this, but they were still very polite with their mega viral tweet that said, "I just realized Bungie took inspiration from my piece for this week's cutscene. Certainly took me by surprise when I watched the cutscene." Of course, the community was quite upset by this blatant plagiarism, but after a couple days of chaos, Bungie stepped in to clarify the situation. We've discovered that an external vendor that helped to create this cutscene mistakenly used this art as a reference, assuming that it was official Bungie art. We've reached out to the artist to apologize for the mix-up and to credit and compensate them for their awesome work. Many people were happy with this reply, and it was good to see the artist get rightfully compensated, but this actually wasn't the only time that Bungie stole artwork from someone in the community. This fan art was also accidentally copy-pasted into a trailer promoting the Witch Queen expansion, and the community quickly noticed that these two images were exactly the same picture. Community manager Cosmo quickly replied that this was indeed a production mistake, but the artwork still remains in the trailer and can be seen even to this day. Next up is the time that Bungie wrote this tweet with good intentions, but it ended up becoming one of the most viewed publicity disasters in the history of the company. The tweet was supposed to be introducing a new group called Latin at Bungie, but it used the wording of Latin/A/E/O/X. Many people were upset about this, with thousands of replies saying things like, "I know that so many people do not understand why it's offensive to use the term Latinx, but it is. It's Latina or Latino in our language and our culture." One of the reasons this topic is so early in the video is because it is insanely well known. And with this single tweet reaching over 25 million views, this potentially makes this the biggest Bungie post of all time. Many of the big commentary and reaction channels like Asmongold weighed in on the situation and accused Bungie of cultural appropriation, and the post continued to gain more traction and people roasted it in the replies. Bungie's response to this was actually to hide many of the replies to the post, upsetting people even further. One of the most popular reactions read, "Hiding replies from your Hispanic players is next level irony of this inclusive post." I don't claim to be insanely educated on this topic, but it's obvious that the community was unhappy, and generally, Latinx seems to be considered disrespectful according to articles like this one titled, "Latinx, Why Do Many Hispanics Hate the Term?" On Destiny 2 launch day for PC, insane amounts of drama instantly overwhelmed the community because Bungie just started banning everybody left and right. Many people took to social media to complain about being banned after just a few hours, and it was ridiculous to watch as hundreds of players got permabanned literally on day one of a brand new game. Some players were suspicious that these bans were automatic and thus done by accident, but Bungie actually doubled down with this post, stating that over 400 players were manually banned for using tools that threaten the ecosystem of the game. Over the following days, players continued to insist on their innocence, and then eventually, after extensive review, Bungie finally admitted that they did ban a large group of innocent players by mistake. This certainly wasn't a good first impression for the big new audience of PC gamers who were trying out Destiny for the first time. The one Destiny-related topic that the broader gaming community will never stop talking about is the infamous Destiny Content Vault, and it is perhaps the most widely known and widely hated thing in the history of the franchise. To this day, I get comments from people who have never played Destiny, but they are refusing to try it out because they've heard that the game just deletes its own content on a regular schedule. And yeah, that is essentially what the Content Vault does. When it was introduced in 2020, players were understandably upset that huge portions of the game were simply being removed, and then every year since then, Destiny has continued to delete more and more of its content. This has made the free-to-play experience a lot worse, and the game has become increasingly awful for new players wanting to try it out. Because there are big chunks of the story that simply do not exist in the modern game, it has become impossible to experience the whole narrative from start to finish. They've removed the base game story, 3 major expansions, and the stories from every single season, and therefore, all new players are just lost because they're missing literal years of Destiny story that will never be returning to the game. The Content Vault was accompanied by further controversy as it also introduced sunsetting, a system that made the vast majority of all loot in the game completely useless. Hundreds and hundreds of items were gone just like that. The developers at Bungie simply informed us that sunsetting and removing all of this content was necessary in order to keep the game running and growing, but this didn't stop people from being extremely upset and extremely vocal about it on social media. We were also promised that content would eventually be re-entering the game with new improvements, but for the most part, this hasn't really been the case. A few strikes and Crucible maps have come back, and partial destinations for things like Leviathan did indeed return, but that was just part of a seasonal event, and of course, seasonal events have all been removed from the game, so it's completely irrelevant in the long term. The race to see who can claim the world's first clear of any Destiny raid is always a super big deal, with hundreds of thousands of Guardians all tuning in to watch it live. With the stakes being so high, Bungie normally disables items that are currently bugged or otherwise so broken that they provide an unfair advantage. Back in 2017 though, one of these glitches slipped through the cracks and it was allowed to be used during the world's first race for Prestige Leviathan. There was this strange technique called coil glitching that essentially provided you with infinite heavy ammo, and Clan Redeem used this glitch throughout the raid in order to secure the world's first completion. Their clear was finished just a few minutes before the second place team, and when people saw that they had used the glitch to win, many players were disappointed. Some called for a disqualification due to the usage of the bug and the extreme advantage that it provided. However, it's kind of expected to use the best strategies during these races, and this technically wasn't banned, so therefore, Bungie officially congratulated them for winning the race on social media. There have been some high-profile streamers that were caught cheating, and they're covered later in this video, but for now, we have this 47-year-old dude by the name of T-Type 1976. As shown in a popular video from content creator Walla, this guy had the bright idea of booting up Destiny 2 to stream one day and then proceeding to use blatant aimbot live on Twitch. He started facing off against notable streamers and he was flexing to his friends about how he was able to destroy even the top players in Trials of Osiris. It was quite entertaining to watch because he tried his absolute hardest to hide his cheats, but at the same time, he was also an absolutely terrible player. He was so bad that he would sometimes toggle his aimbot onto an enemy and then still manage to miss his shot. He also had extremely fake sounding commentary where he just repeated the words "where are they," even though the software was clearly telling him this information. One of the most hilarious moments was when we literally watched him go AFK on his webcam and then his weapon literally started firing as an enemy passed into his crosshairs. Moments later, he walked back into frame and started eating a cookie, but he had no idea that he had just streamed indisputable proof of him cheating to the entire community. After such an obvious display of his cheats, there were a few videos posted about him, and then he proceeded to erase all evidence of his social medias and disappear entirely from the internet. If you ever get sick of the Destiny drama and decide that you want to try something new, I recommend checking out War Thunder, the sponsor of today's video. This is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, featuring thousands of tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships from the past 100 years. I love how they offer tons of different customizations like camouflages, historical markings, and decorations for all types of vehicles. There is also a variety of game modes to ensure that there is something here for every type of player. From arcade all the way up to full realism, you're in control to decide how you want to experience the game. War Thunder is free on all of the big platforms like Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, so download it now using the link in the description to claim a massive bonus pack if you're new or you have not played in 6 months. You'll get an exclusive vehicle decoration, 100,000 Silver Lions, a 7-day premium account, and more. This is only for a limited time though, so download it today to join the community of over 70 million people who play this amazing game. During one of the developer live streams for the Into the Light event, there was a technical difficulty that caused the game to tab out, and this revealed the Steam account that was being played on. With over 100,000 people watching live, there were unfortunately quite a few bad actors who decided to start spamming the account with messages and friend requests that would appear on the screen. It got even worse when certain individuals started giving themselves awful and disrespectful names that targeted the developers. Unfortunately, there was nothing Bungie could do about this, and so for the remainder of the gameplay, there were nearly constant notifications with toxic and hateful names that I obviously won't show here. During and following the stream, this became an extremely hot topic on social media, with many posts saying things like, "The toxicity towards Bungie has gotten egregious." A while later though, it was revealed in this post that Bungie was actually able to track down and permanently ban many of the players who harassed them, and they said that they understand that this was just the actions of a few awful individuals and not reflective of the community at large. One of the most prolonged and detrimental things in Destiny 2 history was the massive influx of cheaters that occurred a few years before we got the anti-cheat. Back in those days, the cheating countermeasures were so primitive and there were so many different cheating softwares that there were literally tens of thousands of hackers playing Destiny 2. When the famed Trials of Osiris mode made its return in 2020, you literally couldn't play a single session of PvP without finding multiple cheaters just using infinite rockets, infinite speed, infinite wall hacks, aimbot, teleportation, immortality, the list goes on. It was a truly depressing time to be a PvP player, and it got even worse with the content drought that followed. Bungie had promised us a quote, renewed focus on PvP, but then they proceeded to introduce almost nothing for the next several years. We even went well over 1,000 days without a single PvP map, and then of course we received Disjunction, which turned out to be a complete trash map in the opinions of most players. After a few years of cheaters just going absolutely bananas, they started to subside after Bungie started working with BattlEye anti-cheat. They also started taking extreme legal action against some of the cheat providers, and we'll talk about that later in the video, but overall, the sheer amount of cheaters back in like 2020 caused an unbelievable amount of damage to the reputation of Destiny and Bungie. There was a lot of controversy surrounding the 2023 raid called Root of Nightmares, as it was famously the easiest raid in Destiny 2 history. Some people applauded the fact that it was more approachable on day one for the casual player base, but it was also sad to see the competitive raid race just become an absolute joke of an experience. Nearly 200,000 people completed the raid during contest mode, which is more than all of the other raids combined, and this led to a lot of heated discussions and arguments about the difficulty level. The dedicated player base was generally unhappy that they didn't get challenged by the one thing that was actually supposed to be challenging in the Lightfall expansion, especially after the recent article that was all focused on, quote, bringing challenge back to Destiny. Datto summed up this frustration inside of his video reacting to the raid race, where he called it an embarrassment, a letdown, and he discussed how many teams were not even remotely challenged by the enemies and were even able to ignore some of the mechanics. Even the returning raids from Destiny 1 took longer to clear than this brand new raid, so clearly it wasn't exactly the challenge and the epic experience that many top players were hoping for. In October 2023, the extremely unfortunate mass layoffs were also a big topic of concern in the community. Bungie laid off about 8% of their workforce due to their revenue being about 45% lower than projected. This was a great loss for Bungie and the community, and key people from the studio were let go. For example, we lost the famed composer Michael Salvatori, who worked on basically all of the music for the Destiny and Halo series. There was non-stop doom posting for literal months after the layoffs, and overall, this was easily one of the darkest and most depressing times that we've ever witnessed. It seemed that things might have been trending upward when the final shape turned out to be an amazing expansion, but less than 2 months later, Bungie was hit with another wave of layoffs. This time, over 400 people parted ways with the company, with some being reassigned to other roles at Sony and others being outright let go. Bungie decided to scrap all projects except for Destiny 2 and Marathon, and thus, the people working on these new games had basically nothing to do. Famed veterans of the company, Luke Smith and Mark Noseworthy, also decided to leave around this time because they were working on the next Destiny game that was scrapped, and this was extremely surprising to hear. Only 2 months prior, Luke Smith was on that big reveal video promising us that he'd be introducing the next chapter of Destiny. But then, that chapter was indefinitely delayed and he is no longer working with the company. Overall, just an unbelievable turn of events. Once again, social media was filled with horrible news day after day, and honestly, at this point, the future of the franchise was more uncertain than ever. It was revealed that Destiny 3 was never in development, Destiny 2 was not getting any more expansions, and there are basically no plans for any exciting Destiny content at any time in the future. We had thought that the previous round of layoffs was rough, but this new scenario just made our outlook become even more grim. The Destiny servers aren't exactly known for being the most stable, and there has been a lot of drama surrounding this fact, but at one point in 2014, it actually wasn't their own fault. The infamous hacker group named Lizard Squad sent out a series of DDoS attacks, and due to Destiny's complete reliance on the servers to stay operational, they took down the entire game for an extended period of time. This was just one of the many attacks on Activision, Microsoft, and PlayStation services that the hacker group took credit for, with the most cruel ones happening on Christmas Day. The group boasted about being able to have a large impact without any legal repercussions, but according to their Wikipedia, it does seem that most members of the group have been charged with some type of crime over the years. Arguably one of the most annoying parts of the Destiny monetization system is the fact that dungeons are not included with expansions anymore. Instead, players are forced to buy these so-called dungeon keys in order to get access to basic content that you would probably assume to be a part of the expansion. There have been several viral Reddit threads like this one calling the dungeon keys disgusting, and they're one of the reasons that Destiny's monetization can be a little bit confusing for beginners. Even though the dungeons are indeed included with the $100 version of the expansion, it still requires you to read the fine print and have some knowledge of the game to actually understand how it truly works. In 2021, an article was posted called "The Battle for Bungie's Soul: Inside the Studio's Struggle for a Better Work Culture." This article claimed that they spoke to 26 different employees at Bungie and learned of some rather concerning reports about the situation at the studio. This included reports of sexism, cruel leadership, extreme crunch, and even protection of certain abusive people who worked there. From the outside perspective, we can really only speculate about what may or may not be actually happening behind closed doors, but we have seen a number of these reports come out over the years that describe a rather concerning environment inside of Bungie. Especially following the layoffs in 2023, there were many reports of poor leadership and management, like this post from community manager DMG. He said, "It is frustrating, infuriating even, to continue seeing people who strap in to do good work losing their financial security due to poor management." Following the release of all of this news, many players have started to blame the higher-ups instead of Bungie as a whole for many of the problems that exist in the game. The Twilight Garrison was a fan-favorite Titan exotic from Destiny 1 that gave players an epic air dodge move, and thus, when Destiny 2 came out, players started begging for the exotic to make a return in the new game. This continued on for years, but eventually, developer Kevin Yanis came out and said, "Titans will never get air dodge back, my guy. It's part of the Warlock identity. Sorry, but I want to rip that band-aid off." Unfortunately, certain players did not take this news well, and they even decided to harass Kevin because he made the announcement. It got so bad that Kevin had to remove the post, and he proceeded to deactivate all of his social accounts and basically disappear from social media entirely. It's truly sad to see, but events like this have ultimately led the developers to simply communicating and sharing less about the game in general. DMG reinforced this by stating, "Cases of harassment against our developers have actively made it harder for us to communicate with the broader community. It has impacted more studios than just ours. I hope that more folks can stand against this behavior in any community, whether it be gaming related or other." One day in 2014, former community manager Deej accidentally posted a link to some spicy material onto the Destiny website. Essentially what happened is when he first sent the link, it just went to an image that said welcome in several different languages, but then after an unknown amount of time, the website owner changed the image to be something far less appropriate. The Destiny community was understandably going insane as they were clicking on this ordinary looking link from the community manager and then discovering its shocking contents. After news got out about this, the topic was quickly hidden from view and the link was removed from Bungie's website. Zavala's voice actor sadly passed away in 2023, but just about a year later, this post surfaced showing a player with the name Lance Reddick deserved it. Players were outraged by this disrespect towards the beloved voice actor, and there were massive posts like this one from Grenader Jake on Twitter. Community manager DMG stepped in to call this absolutely disgusting behavior and assure everyone that the name would be removed. Many players assumed that this insane level of disrespect would lead to a ban within the game, but that actually does not seem to be the case. Although this player was forced to change his name, the user was still active playing Destiny 2 as recent as 9 hours ago. A world's first raider by the name of Cruz was permanently banned one day because he installed a program that could potentially be used to cheat in Destiny 2. According to him, it was actually just a super old program used for single-player games and it was never used inside of D2, but nonetheless, Bungie upheld their decision to keep him banned. Many players were upset by this decision, believing that he should have at least been given a warning instead of a ban. Interestingly, a few months later, a different Destiny streamer was given a warning for breaking Bungie's terms of service. Bungie has rarely given out public warnings in the past, so this was really interesting to see. The streamer in question was engaging in network manipulation by using a VPN in order to cheese a raid mechanic. He posted this to Twitter, and then the Destiny 2 team account replied, "Wanted to give fair warning. This breaks our TOS. We understand the desire to take on more challenging content solo, but manipulating network in an effort to gain any advantage in PvE or PvP can lead to restrictions or bans. We highly advise against doing this." While I think that most people are glad that he didn't get banned for this, some were also accusing Bungie of giving him preferential treatment due to him being a streamer. Another reply directly compared Cruz's ban to Lep's warning. Obviously, having a cheating software installed and using a VPN are not the same thing, but overall it was just interesting to see Bungie hand out this warning in this manner. Hopefully, they will start issuing more warnings instead of bans for minor offenses. During an interview for the Taken King expansion, Luke Smith said, "If I fired up a video right now and showed you the emotes, you would throw money at the screen." Players did not exactly take this very well, with writer Paul Tassi saying, "It was astonishing how tone-deaf every aspect of it was." Nobody quite knew this at the time, but this moment marked the start of the slow and steady rise of microtransactions within Destiny. The Eververse store actually did not exist back in the day, but then Tess appeared in the tower and the seasonal events were introduced. Over time, more and more cosmetics and other real money items slowly began making their way into the game. We will cover monetization later in the video, but this little quote about throwing money at the screen made many players feel that the game was headed in a concerning direction. I don't really know how this keeps happening, but Sony and PlayStation have developed a consistent habit of leaking Destiny-related things before they were originally planned to go live. This all started with the Witch Queen expansion when the Australian PlayStation Store accidentally posted an early pre-order before quickly removing it. This revealed tons of details about the DLC, like the pre-order bonuses, the Ostiostriga SMG, details about the Throne World destination, and even information about weapon crafting. Several months later, PlayStation managed to do it again when PlayStation Japan accidentally posted this Season of the Haunted trailer well ahead of time for no apparent reason. Bungie was forced to just release the trailer because it was leaked and people were going to watch it anyway, but at this point they started to just get annoyed about PlayStation's repeated leaking of their content. According to one person, there were even jokes inside of the studio where they would take guesses on how PlayStation would manage to leak even more content in the future. As it turned out, this would indeed happen for a third time when they accidentally allowed people to play the entirety of the Final Shape expansion multiple days before it was intended to go live. They did take the servers offline quite rapidly and nobody really got too far into the campaign, but there were still leaks showing people inspecting the new weapons and the season pass and watching the cutscenes. Bungie said that this was a devastating leak, considering that this was literally the conclusion of the whole 10-year saga of the game, but luckily not too much information was circulated throughout the community. When Bungie announced that they were working on Marathon in addition to Destiny 2, many players were intrigued and excited about the upcoming release. But for some players, that excitement quickly turned to bitterness as they realized that Marathon was getting features that Destiny fans have desperately been asking for years. During a time when PvP was at historic levels of neglect, Bungie came along and announced dedicated servers, insane anti-cheat, and several other features that would be brought to their new game, but not Destiny. Many of the developers had literally left Destiny's PvP to go work on Marathon, so whether it was accurate or not, there was a sentiment that Destiny was being left in the dust to create this new game. Asdacross said, "Can we get dedicated servers in Destiny 2? Sucks that Marathon is getting the good stuff before us." Back in 2023, there was this leak showing an upcoming Red Subclass that was supposedly being introduced to Destiny 2. Many people were crafting up crazy theories and there were many videos about the topic, but as it turns out, this was confirmed to be fake. There may be some sort of nightmare power or something in the future, but these specific leaks and these icons were just completely made up by some guy trying to troll the community. Later in the video, we cover a few cases of cheat developers being sued for insane amounts of money, but in this case, it was actually the cheater himself who got hit with a hefty lawsuit and fine. One player by the name of Luca decided that he wanted to cheat in Destiny 2, and of course, he was predictably banned after some time, but then he decided to circumvent that ban by creating a new account and returning to the game. He didn't just do this once though. He actually created dozens of new accounts and got banned time after time, all while cheating and overlaying the cheating software, which apparently counts as copyright infringement. After months and months of this guy creating new accounts, Bungie's legal team decided to do something, and they slapped him with a $300,000 lawsuit for the copyright and an additional $200,000 for 100 acts of ban circumvention. And yes, this guy had such a ridiculous addiction to Destiny that he made 100 different accounts and got banned on every single one of them. He was also trying to circumvent the license agreement on each of these new accounts, making each login technically an unlicensed copyright violation. In addition to getting a court order banning him from all Bungie games, he was also issued a restraining order due to his apparent harassment of one of the Bungie developers. The judge also ordered him to shut down all of his social media accounts pertaining to the violations, making this overall perhaps the most severe and comprehensive permaban in gaming history. This guy's life basically got annihilated by this situation, sending a clear message that you probably don't want to cheat in any of Bungie's current or future games. When Transmog was first introduced into Destiny 2, it was done in such a confusing and overcomplicated way that it really upset a lot of people in the community. Not only did it require currencies and a whole new economy, but it was also so time-gated that it would literally take a decade to unlock all of the armor in the game. Now obviously this isn't the goal because a lot of the armor looks like garbage, but still, it was crazy just how bad this was. Paul Tassi said, "In short, what Bungie has come up with is probably the worst iteration of a transmog system they could have possibly produced. It was eventually improved over the years, but still, it's not quite as elegant as in other games." Our next scandal began when Bungie publicly declared that a recent community summit had been compromised and information had been leaked. These summits involve people from the community and they're meant to give feedback on the future of Destiny. They are obviously very strictly confidential, and all attendees are required to sign non-disclosure agreements and promise to never speak about anything that they see at the event. Based on all of that, you can understand why it was a big deal that there was actually a leak. Within their tweets, Bungie also emphasized that the security of these summits was important, stating that breaches of this trust could result in our inability to hold more summits. "We take these breaches extremely seriously and are taking action to reinforce our policies for those invited to these internal meetings." The next day, a Forbes article revealed that a popular streamer known as EK was being accused as the leaker and that he had been permanently banned from Destiny 2. However, he vehemently denied all wrongdoing, saying, "All I know is that company made a huge mistake and I will clear my name." For those unaware, EK has over 14,000 hours of gameplay in Destiny and was well known for carrying people through Grandmaster Nightfalls on stream. This allegation of him being the leaker had the whole community freaking out because some believed it was him, but also it didn't really make any logical sense. Like, why would he risk ruining his entire career in content creation just to leak a couple of pictures of upcoming Destiny content? Some community members were also very suspicious of the evidence because the only public connection was that some of his desktop icons looked very similar to the leaked screenshots. There were many people on both sides of the situation, but overall everyone was just waiting to see what would happen next. For a while, no more information was revealed and everyone just continued with the speculation. After a couple days of reviewing the situation though, the Destiny 2 team account put the issue to rest with the following statement. "Our security and legal teams have reviewed irrefutable evidence, including video recordings, verified messages, and images demonstrating a pattern over time that confirm the same individual shared confidential information from community summits spanning multiple years." The bit that surprised me the most was the thing at the end about it taking place over multiple years. Like, not only did he risk his career by leaking the most recent information, but he literally did the same thing consistently after being invited back to several different events. He did break his NDA, and Bungie could have easily destroyed him even more with legal action, but they decided to just stop at a permanent ban from the game. It seemed that the matter was settled after that tweet, but more than a year later, he is still desperately claiming his innocence on social media. As seen in this picture from Paul Tassi's DMs, he is saying that a remote hacker got into his computer and stole the images of the Bungie summit before leaking them out to the community. He has remained banned from Destiny, but he has continued streaming other games with varying degrees of success. One of the darkest and most controversial times in Destiny history came during 2017, when D2 launched in a very underwhelming state. It felt like the game basically just launched as Destiny 1.5, and there was a lot of systems that basically got simplified and dumbed down for seemingly no reason. We went from these big customizable subclasses to these two tiny restrictive trees. We went from having fast and powerful characters to slow and boring gameplay with no special ammo and weak abilities. There was no strike-specific loot, no random rolls, no private matches, and overall, it just felt like there was nothing to do once you had completed the campaign and the basic activities. The overall poor launch and reception of the game was really big news at the time. People were terrified that this could be the end of the franchise, and players were leaving the game in droves. Many content creators even announced their departure, going to focus on Fortnite and other games that were coming up at the time. Most players were simply just bored by the lack of innovation and the lack of an endgame, and the following statement really sums up how many people were feeling at the time.
Brand new game, not even a month old, at least while I'm recording this video, and I feel like I don't have much left to do.
Especially when the Bungie stream came out for the Curse of Osiris expansion, we learned that basically nothing was going to change except for we'd now get 2 tokens and a blue from the monotonous public event grind.
I promised before that this was the most rewarding public event, and there we have it. We have 2 chests.
All of these things combined just led to a very tumultuous time in the community where nobody was really happy. It seemed like every day there was a new video titled something like, "Here's why Destiny 2 sucks," and there was really no hope in sight. Luckily, the Forsaken expansion revived the game the following year, but this 2017 era will be remembered for all of its negativity and controversy, and it easily goes down as perhaps the worst period in the history of the franchise. Even when the Forsaken expansion did revive the game though, there was still plenty of drama surrounding it. This time, it came from Activision, the company that was publishing Destiny at the time. They basically just came out and said that they were very dissatisfied with the performance of Forsaken, despite it literally saving the game and bringing millions of players back. Apparently that wasn't enough though, and Activision still considered the game to be underperforming and not meeting their sales projections. However, Luke Smith did clap back as he said, "We are not disappointed with Forsaken. We set out to build a game that Destiny players would love, and at Bungie, we love it too." Following the perceived underperformance of this expansion though, it became obvious that microtransactions were being increased. It's hard to say if it was just a coincidence, but many players believe that this was strategically done to extract more money from the existing players because Forsaken was falling short on revenue expectations. The Eververse store was expanded, and over the next few years it continued to balloon to unimaginable levels. It all came to a peak in 2023, by which time the game had such an overabundance of microtransactions that the community was getting really tired and angry about it. Aztecross posted his now infamous video roasting the situation, demonstrating how the game had devolved over time. Like I mentioned earlier, we started out with literally no real money currency at all within the game, but then they slowly started adding things like emotes, shaders, vehicles, finishers, event cards, dungeon keys, season passes, pay-to-win systems, and it really just got out of hand. As it was said, quite accurately, I used to walk into a store and find a game. Now I walk into a game and I find a store. Especially with the total cost of the game and all of its expansions being quite expensive for new players, it was a major point of frustration for the community. A large Destiny YouTuber by the name of Bakken posted the following tweet in June 2021. "Just got banned in D2 for the second time with no explanation. This is kind of ridiculous. I'd like some people at Bungie to look into it. There's no way I get banned when I see mad cheaters play for months." Bakken was known for posting crazy PvP montages and quite impressive clips to his YouTube channel dating all the way back to D1, so people were surprised to see him suddenly banned like this. He was clearly a good player, and nobody really suspected him of being a cheater. He literally had hundreds of impressive clips up on YouTube, and it didn't really seem that there were any signs of foul play. In response to the original tweet, community manager DMG replied, "Bans are not issued without reason. Team has validated this action multiple times thanks to anti-cheat detection and investigation." Bakken immediately denied these allegations of cheating and pressured DMG for more information, stating that he'd like to see proof of what he was doing that resulted in the ban. This seemed like a bit of an unreasonable request given that Bungie had clearly already double-checked the reason for the ban, but being the legendary community manager that he is, DMG came back again to reply once more. took some time to triple check this with the security team. We have detected 2 accounts under your ownership using cheat suites while playing Destiny 2 and have banned 4 accounts in total, includes ban evasion. This is our final communication on this matter. This mic drop moment absolutely annihilated Bakken's career, and the fact that he had 4 separate accounts completely erased any doubt that anyone might have had. This ban also started to raise a lot of questions and concerns for people who had played with Bakken, since Bungie does also ban people who play alongside cheaters. Many content creators and other skilled players in the community had played with Bakken in the past, and some of them were a little bit concerned about potentially being banned for their association with him. I don't think that any additional players were banned in this specific instance, but it is an important rule to remember. If one of your teammates who used to be kinda bad suddenly starts becoming an amazing player when the stakes are high, it might be time to distance yourself from them for a bit. There haven't been too many recent updates on this, but in 2022, Bakken did upload a video called Trespassing on Momentum Property. In this video, he ironically uses the trespasser while trespassing in the game that he isn't allowed to play, and the description claims that this is his 68th account, although that could be an exaggeration. He also has a pinned comment saying, "For the record, I never cheated in PvP, only in PvE to no-clip fly around, and that's how I was banned for the first time." A couple years back, there was a Destiny 2 player who got permabanned and sued for $500,000 because he sent a pizza to Bungie. More specifically, he ordered a Domino's pizza to be sent directly to the house of community manager DMG as a threat, and he also sent very hateful messages. He intentionally requested the pizza to have an extremely foul selection of toppings to make it completely inedible, and then he selected the option to pay on delivery. This was done with malicious intent to increase the chances of a confrontation, because of course, the delivery driver would attempt to collect payment when he arrived. Additionally, he informed the delivery driver that he would be wearing headphones, and therefore he told him to knock at least 5 times loudly to make the intrusion even more alarming. The individual also repeatedly harassed, threatened, and sent horrific messages to the community manager, and based on these events, Bungie filed a lawsuit. According to the documentation, he demonstrated all of the hallmarks of an attacker of high concern. This guy's harassment was obviously unacceptable, but somehow he actually thought that this scumbag behavior was funny and not a big deal. In a Discord message with a friend, he appeared to be boasting about how he was now banned from Destiny 2 and that they had traced the pizza delivery back to him. He never showed up to court, and therefore the default judgment was granted, and he is now liable for the $500,000 of damages caused by his detestable behavior. Something that has been an area of concern in Destiny ever since the early days was this recurring theme of content being rebooted. Destiny 1 was famously rebooted right before launch, and they had actually a complete story, but then just decided to delete it and start over completely. This happened again with both of the first expansions of D1, and even with D2 itself. Destiny 2 was in development with undisclosed leadership for a while, but then in 2016 it was rebooted and Luke Smith stepped in to lead the new version of the game. Many players blame Bungie's leadership for these reboots, believing that they were the root cause for all of the rushed and seemingly underdeveloped releases that we've seen over the years. I'm not even sure that all of the reboots are publicly known about, but there have been quite a few of them since the very first one occurred in 2013. Next up is a rather suspicious in-game scandal where a design choice intentionally scammed dedicated players out of their time and investment in the game. In 2017, the game mostly just involved grinding monotonous public events for exotics, and then once you had all of the exotics and static roll weapons, there was zero additional loot incentive or endgame of any kind. The only thing that was actually kind of rare was the cosmetic loot from Eververse, and these cosmetics were earned through bright engrams. These engrams could be purchased with real money or earned through experience within the game, and this was a pretty standard practice at the time. At a glance, this was fair enough, but after some investigation, a few players noticed that the XP numbers in-game weren't actually lining up with the actual amount of XP that they were getting. The numbers and graphics, like the XP progress bar, were not correct, and the game was straight up lying about experience gains. After a lot of testing and some very extensive posts on the matter, it became clear that the more you played the game, the less experience you would actually earn. Therefore, this also meant that the more you played, the fewer bright engrams you would earn, and then the more tempted you would be to spend real money instead. This was also happening immediately after similar controversies in other games like Star Wars Battlefront 2, so people were already sick and tired of the shady monetization practices. On top of all of that, Bungie had also just revealed the extremely lackluster Curse of Osiris expansion in a livestream, so it would be an understatement to say that the community was pissed. Bungie responded to the outrage, removing the XP throttling system and saying that they were, quote, not happy with the results. They didn't explicitly blame it on a bug, so everyone just kind of continued with the assumption that this was a deliberate, scummy move to extract more money from the community. To make matters worse, the amount of experience needed to earn an engram was also secretly doubled to account for this change. Of course, this drastically reduced the amount of bright engrams that players could earn, and again, encouraged people to spend more money instead of actually earning the cosmetics inside of the game. The stealth change was discovered by players and not announced by Bungie, adding yet another reason for players to be upset and disappointed. To this day, people still consider this whole debacle to be extremely shady and disingenuous, and for many, it sums up the negative feelings around this dark period of Destiny's past. The Destiny 2 new player experience is really not the greatest, but it only became worse when they added a new product called the Destiny Starter Pack in the store. The starter pack included some random materials and a few exotics, and this would be great if it was free. But instead, this was a very transparent and tone-deaf way to just extract more money from the players because it cost a ridiculous $15. This was a borderline scam due to the quality and amount of items that it provided, and you could even make the argument that it was predatory because it specifically targeted new players who didn't know any better. The Destiny starter pack would be a great idea if it actually did what it claimed to do, but the stuff included was almost worthless, and it certainly did not provide new players with $15 worth of value to their account. The community at the time was already super fed up with the state of the game, the recent layoffs, and the overall pricing model, so this move came off as incredibly tone-deaf and obnoxious. After getting absolutely roasted by the community and in a particularly scathing video from Dado, Bungie decided to completely remove the so-called starter pack from the game. Earlier, we mentioned how people really despised the sunsetting and Destiny content vault systems, but years after it was implemented, there was a new change that sparked additional drama. Bungie straight up told us that old loot would never be useful again, and in order to free up vault space, many people deleted their old items. It then came as quite a surprise when Bungie announced that they would actually be completely undoing this entire system and sunrising all of the old weapons to the max power level. This was kind of upsetting for some players because they deleted all of their stuff thinking that it would never be useful again, but then Bungie retroactively decided to undo all of that and make all weapons relevant once more. All I'm gonna say is that I'm glad I never fell victim to a vault cleaning, and I now have over 100 unsunset items like this Duke MK44 that I can now use once again. There have been a few instances where developers have banned YouTubers from the game, but when Bungie decides to sue a YouTuber for $7.6 million, you know that they must have really messed up. This story begins when a total of 96 Destiny YouTube videos were forcibly deleted for copyright reasons, seemingly by a representative of Bungie. The copyright strikes appeared to be executed by CSC, a company that works with Bungie to manage their intellectual property. Many of the big Destiny creators at the time received these notices that several of their videos were being deleted due to copyright infringement, and let me tell you, this is one of the scariest things that can ever happen to you as a content creator. If your channel gets 3 strikes for this type of thing, it gets permanently deleted. Creators were understandably confused and furious, thinking that Bungie had just turned their backs and decided to delete all Destiny creators from the face of the earth. Nobody knew this at the time, but Bungie themselves were also being impacted by copyright of their own game. Their own videos about their own game were being taken down for copyright. Obviously, this makes no sense whatsoever, and it became clear that it must be a malicious third party that was doing the copyright strikes. A random guy outside of Bungie and outside of their partner company was actually the one creating these false copyright strikes and sabotaging both Bungie and all of the YouTubers. Bungie immediately kicked off an investigation, but they were strangely met with a lot of resistance from YouTube. Despite literally being a billion-dollar company, they had an extremely difficult time getting a hold of anyone at YouTube who could help, and the customer service experience was unable to address the issue. YouTube also refused to give up the identity of the person who was responsible for all of this, and Bungie literally had to take them to court to force them to reveal who the person was. This guy had a personal grudge against Bungie because he got in trouble for uploading Destiny music in a way that violated Bungie's policies. After repeated warnings, his channel was actually deleted due to the copyright. I guess that this really pissed him off because that's when he decided to impersonate the company called CSC and proceed to unleash 96 copyright takedowns on the entire Destiny community. Meanwhile, at the same time that he was doing the copyright strikes, he was also just playing along like he had no idea what was happening. He was talking to people in the community and acting like he was on our side while simultaneously being the instigator of the entire situation. Luckily, the copyright strikes were able to be addressed and removed before anyone's channel got deleted, but the situation still threatened the livelihoods of creators. Revenue from this time couldn't just be magically restored or reimbursed, so certain creators lost a solid chunk of cash. I wasn't personally impacted, but I heard from many of my friends that they put out big videos at this time and it was a really tough financial situation. Once the identity of Lord Nazo became known 3 months after the fact, Bungie decided to take legal action against him for the damage he inflicted on the community and on Bungie itself. Apparently, the damages included $150,000 for each video impacted, totaling $7,650,000 plus legal fees. In the end though, it's pretty clear that everyone lost in this story. Like yes, this guy did make his point about the YouTube copyright system being easily exploited, but at what cost? Destiny creators and Bungie employees lost sleep and revenue, and since he committed these crimes, Lord Nazo's life was potentially ruined by this lawsuit. As of 2024, it seems that Bungie has won the case, but the ruling did not resolve the millions of dollars of damages. The two parties settled for an undisclosed amount, bringing this story to a rather uncertain conclusion. One morning, a bunch of highly skilled Destiny players woke up and found that they were mysteriously banned from Destiny 2. They started posting screenshots of their bans on social media, but you have to understand that this isn't really something that is too uncommon. As we've seen with the other cases in this video, there are many people who will claim their innocence even when they know that they've definitely cheated or otherwise deserve a ban. I'm pretty sure that this was also what Bungie was thinking as they tweeted out, "Earlier this week we issued a small number of bans for cheating. If you are unsure why your account may have been banned, please review our guidelines here," and they provided a link to their website. This unfortunately seemed to only further upset the people involved, as there was no reason provided for their ban. A growing number of players were beginning to notice that they were indeed also banned from the game, and they were all claiming to be innocent. For some reason, speedrunners in particular were the people who were getting banned here, and it did seem unusual that so many of them were banned all at once. It seemed extremely unlikely that a bunch of the best players in the world would decide to all start cheating at the same time for no apparent reason. After a few days of being banned, the speedrunners all tweeted out messages stating that they had been unbanned, saying things like, "Still don't know why I was banned in the first place." Something must have gone wrong with the anti-cheat that accidentally flagged their accounts for banning. However, this isn't the only time that someone got banned for absolutely no reason. Dre, the creator of the popular D2 Gunsmith website, was also banned one day out of the blue. He was understandably quite upset by this and also with the game in general, and he decided to uninstall and stop working on the game and the website entirely. A while later, he followed up by saying, "Got unbanned, still uninstalled, and probably staying that way for a while. No, I never ended up sending an appeal, and I'm done working on the site." This was quite sad for a lot of players to hear, as his website was pretty great, and clearly he just got caught by mistake. Bungie admitted that this was indeed the case, stating that human error on a new cheat detection caused some incorrect bans to occur this week. Almost exactly a year later, a very similar thing happened where Bungie accidentally banned tons of people, and there were headlines like, "Bungie is giving Destiny 2 players $45 of in-game currency to say sorry for accidentally banning them from the game." Although the anti-cheat is probably accurate 99.9% of the time, it still really sucks to see examples of stuff like this where innocent people are impacted, and in the case of Dre, even retire from playing the game and making one of the game's greatest websites. It seems that this retirement was permanent, as his profile now reads, "Done and dusted, out of this world." For those of you who are unaware, there is a gaming team by the name of Gamers First, or G1 for short, and they've been heavily involved in the Destiny space. Ironically though, they've been doing the exact opposite of putting gamers first, and in fact, they're actually putting gamers last. This team has been an absolute disaster from the very beginning, and although I can't reveal all of my sources for privacy reasons, there's a bunch of scummy practices that aren't widely known about in the community. This all started back in the day because a different team called Soar Gaming had a Destiny roster. The entire roster decided to actually leave Soar to create the new team called G1, but then in the process, the owners of G1 decided to exclude some of the players from the team. So they essentially just baited all of the Destiny people into leaving Soar and then said, "Oh, actually, never mind, only some of you are invited to the new team and the rest of you guys are just on your own now." Unfortunately though, it only got worse from there. G1 proceeded to hire professional teams in Destiny and a variety of other games, and also hire staff and acquire other companies like Evolve PCs. They took on a ridiculous amount of overhead expenses that they were evidently not able to afford. I've heard that they allegedly owe hundreds of thousands of dollars to tons of people across several different games and multiple positions. To add insult to injury, they had one of the most baffling and worst responses that I've ever seen when they started getting called out for this. The official G1 Twitter page started blocking the creators who they owed hundreds of thousands of dollars. The whole thing is just a disaster, and they allegedly aren't even paying rent for their extremely expensive facility that they acquired in Texas. Many people have gone unpaid dating back over a year, and Destiny streamer Grenader Jake announced in 2024 that he's filing a lawsuit against G1 for refusing to pay back the $100,000 that he is owed. Many additional people also replied to that announcement and said that they are also owed various amounts of money, further adding to the long list of people wronged by this organization. Although the lawsuit is still pending and no verdict has been reached, the sheer number of people who've had issues getting paid is alarming. As it stands now, the team has been blacklisted by essentially everybody in esports and in content creation, and people are just skeptical about dealing with any of their owners and their shady business practices. Even though some of the events mentioned in this video were rather tragic, I hope that you enjoyed this coverage of some of the craziest things that we've seen in the past 10 years. Like I mentioned earlier, the D2 launch involved insane amounts of controversy that you might not remember, so next up I recommend watching this video covering what the game was actually like back in the early days. And also, a big shout out to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. You can download it today with the link below and join the community of over 70 million players.